You ever feel like you're being told one thing, but your gut says something different? Like, hey, the economy's fine, stop worrying. But then you go to buy groceries or pay bills and you're like, no, the economy is not fine. You may have heard the term vibecession, meaning when things seem okay on paper, but don't actually feel that way in real life. And honestly, here in Alberta, we're living that reality right now. I'm Dawn, and I've talked before about how we're not technically in a recession by definition, but let's face it, when costs are high, wages aren't keeping up, unemployment is soaring, and people are struggling, it doesn't really matter what the official label is. Today, I want to take a look into Alberta's economy, the state of Canada overall, and what might be coming in 2025. There's a lot to unpack here, so stick around. We've been hearing about this so-called vibecession, where the government keeps saying the economy is good. But here's the thing. Real GDP per capita has been declining for 6 of the past 7 quarters. That means, on average, we're getting poorer, even if the economy as a whole is growing. And let's be clear, the only reason we're still seeing the growth is because of the large influx of newcomers to Canada. There is simply more people buying basic goods, therefore pushing up our GDP. Now, let's talk about something that hits close to home, and that's unemployment here in Calgary, which is soaring. With so many people moving to Alberta, thanks to things like affordability compared to other provinces, our population has grown faster than our job market can handle. Unemployment in Calgary hit 7.9% in November, 2 percentage points higher than a year ago, according to StatsCan, and that's above the current national rate of 6.8%. Now, this is all despite strong job growth. Most of the growth in Calgary was led by healthcare, social assistance, construction, manufacturing, wholesale and retail, and professional, scientific, and technical services, while other services, excluding public administration and building and other support services, fell in employment from last year. But what's unique about Calgary is that we have the highest labor force participation rate in the country at 70.4%. We also know that the highest rate of unemployed individuals are younger folks and immigrants. Now, if you moved here to work but can't find a job, how long do you stay just looking for work? Literally. Moving on. Let's not sugarcoat it. The Canadian dollar is in rough shape. Right now, as of December 18th, 1 Canadian dollar gets you just 69 cents USD, the weakest it's been since 2020. That sucks, especially when you're buying imported goods or planning a trip. It's more expensive all around. The Bank of Canada cut rates again in December, another 50 basis points, bringing it down to 3.25%, which is 175 basis points from the peak. We really have no choice because the economy is shit and they need to boost household spending. Meanwhile, the US Federal Reserve cut their rate by 25 basis points and indicated that they will likely only cut by another 50 basis points in all of 2025. That difference makes US investments more appealing and it drags down the Canadian dollar. But it's not just about interest rates. As I said, our economy isn't looking so great. The government just lowered their GDP growth forecast for 2025 and 2026, and to top it all off, Chrystia Freeland resigned. Now, let's be clear, I'm not disappointed to see her go. I think we've got a few more that need to resign or step down, if you will, but she was a key figure in handling trade, and now with tariffs on the table from the US, we need a clear plan and a leader to manage that, and it really doesn't feel like we have the right person for the job. Here's where it gets interesting. In Canada, bond yields have been falling as investors flock to safer options, seeing our economy as more vulnerable. But in the US, bond yields are holding strong, reflecting confidence in their economic outlook. The US economy is still growing, their unemployment is low, and their consumer spending is solid. For two countries that are typically in lockstep, it's like two different worlds. The gap between how the two countries are performing and how their markets are reacting is just getting wider. Now, for us here in Alberta, this all boils down to a few things. A weaker dollar means higher prices for anything imported, groceries, electronics, travel, you name it. At the same time, businesses relying on imported goods are feeling the pinch, which could lead to higher costs passed on to us as consumers. Now, on the flip side, a weaker loonie could be good for exporters here in Alberta, like oil and gas producers, but that depends on demand holding up globally. It's not exactly a guarantee. Economists are saying this vibecession might ease by 2025, but let's be real, it's gonna take more than a few rate cuts to turn things around. Lower rates might help people renewing mortgages or businesses taking out loans, but they're not fixing the bigger issues, things like rising insolvencies, weaker productivity, and higher costs are still in play. And while the US economy keeps cruising along, we've got to figure out how to get our own house in order. I don't want to sound all doom and gloom, because shout out to my friend Steven, who comments on everything, who will call me a Debbie Downer again, but we've got to face reality here. The Canadian dollar is weak and our economy is struggling, and the leadership at the federal level, well, let's just say it's not inspiring a ton of confidence right now. One thing I can say is our housing market here in Calgary is looking fairly solid, with prices likely to remain balanced, and there is always a chance that lowered rates could encourage more buyers off the fence. Now, that news being good or bad really depends on what side of the transaction you're on, but for now, it seems homes will hold their value fairly well. We've got some tough years ahead, but one thing I will say is Albertans have always been very resilient. I just want to say happy holidays to everybody. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.